Welcome, Dr. James Beckett Sports Card Insights. I want to thank my sponsors, Topps, Panini, Upper Deck, Heritage Auctions, Huggins & Scott Auctions, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Burbank Sports Cards, ComC.com, and Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication. So here's an episode for your listening enjoyment.
You say it all the time, and I'm an adherent to being a lifelong learner.
I am a lifelong learner, but I make a distinction between, I've done a couple of things in the last month. I had this learning experience that was described in one of my podcasts of buying a bunch of retail hangers and blasters and things like that. Mm-hmm. I had that learning experience. Then the month before, I mentioned the learning experience of helping my friend sell his deceased brother-in-law's collection. John, those are two learning experiences I don't want to have again. I've learned enough. So I'm a lifelong learner, but I want to learn something new. I don't want to buy more blasters and hangers. I don't want to help another friend sell his collection. It was a learning experience the first time, but now that I know what's involved in both of those, it would have to be an awful good friend for me to help, and it'd have to be an awful good deal for me to want to buy some unopened product, because toward the end, I'm saying, you know what, I've learned enough. You have such a volume of cards to port over, and you're learning the new platform. And like you say, it's not binary, but it's more of a wiki thing. The customer service is more user supported.
You're right. And photos are uploaded by users and on the platforms.
Whereas the Beckett platform is way more restrictive, and they're shorthanded. That's the thing. So you could give them all these great change requests, and I think they go in a big stack of other change requests that they've gotten from other people that they just don't have the manpower. We had separate customer service with the magazines as well as the digital online and the pricing stuff, because you have a different kind of a knowledgeable respondent on the phone that's got to be able to get to the bottom of, is this really something we need to work on?
Imagine my frustration when you do email customer support and you get no answer. And yet the marketing department's certainly not shy about asking you to renew, and here's a great deal for you and all that stuff. It's tough to swallow. And I understand it's two different arms. It's a customer service arm and it's a marketing arm, but still it's frustrating when they're sending you everything they want to send you, yet they're not reading or responding to anything you're sending them.
I'm not saying it's my fault, but I am saying that when I started the company, I was pretty quickly overwhelmed with people asking me questions. We used to get 1 billion pieces of snail mail a month at the peak. We had a bunch of people opening it, and I read more than my share and all that. But I got to the point where we created a system where we did not respond individually. We responded through Reader's Right and other kinds of approaches. I won't say we couldn't afford to. We chose not to do one-offs. If it was a one-off, it just went in the back burner. But if more than one person had it, people knew that we would have it in the magazine the next month. The answer that everybody could hear, that we wouldn't be telling people one at a time. And as for marketing, I was never a big marketer. We tried to put out a good product. So I take your point. That's really frustrating to get all these marketing emails, because there's almost no cost to those.
Let me ask you a question.
There could be a negative cost if you're ticking off your customers.
you had a certain group of high volume LCSs or whatever, right? Yeah. And whatever that number was and whatever that determinant was that you said you had some high level customers, they ordered however many magazines from your month. You answered their letters most likely, right?
They were on the phone. Yes, if somebody was a bigger customer, they got appropriately more attention, but it was mainly because they were not anonymous, and the person in the company that was going to help them was not anonymous. They were on a first name basis with the person that would either fix it or get them to the person to fix it. And that's my lament for you, is that other than me, which I'm not in the loop anymore, but that when they knew who to contact. I get these emails and messages and hit up at shows of, hey, I got a problem. And I'll say, who's your rep or who's your person? They don't have a person. So it's a problem. If you don't have a person, you can say, hey, Steve, or hey, Susie, I've got a problem here. Can you help me? Then when you're complaining about it, he said, I told Susie 3 times and she ignored me. Then Susie can get in trouble, or Steve, or whoever it is. So that's the only thing that was different. But basically, I always felt if somebody complained about something, I didn't want to just get them on the phone and schmooze them. I wanted to fix the problem. Apparently, what you're saying is that my former company is doing neither.
I don't know. There is a perception of Beckett Media at this point that the lights are on, but there's nobody home. And that started with the pandemic.
Can I take your analogy and just say the lights are on, but they're shorthanded. You know? And so
Sounds like a them problem, not a me problem, right? As a customer.
it's enough
Yeah.
for you to say, I
Yeah.
don't want to deal with that. I'm going to go to the restaurant where I get good service. The food is
Right.
similar. I want to get good service, but I think they're shorthanded. So yes, the lights are on. From my experience over there, it's not that people don't care. It's not that they are incompetent. It's not that they are dishonest. They are shorthanded for some period of time based on the old structure with the way the company was set up and the accounting that was done. There was not reinvestment in not just the company, but in the people and the processes. And I think that's hindsight now. But this new structure that people are making fun of, this new umbrella holding company, which is not disavowing the Beckett name as much as giving an accounting entity that's refinanced, restructured, so that they can honestly keep score. And if you'll notice, they had another announcement that they're moving forward, locking down Steve Grad and his teammates for some additional relationship that they have. So I'm hopeful things are going to be moving forward, because I just think they were treading water or bobbing or having the lights turned low to save money, to use your lights off. But I don't think the lights have ever been off.
Right.
They're just shorthanded. And it's really frustrating to me because I never wanted to lose. We had exit interviews, and some of which I conducted. If we lost a big customer, I wanted to know what went on there. How
Right.
could this happen? Who would be in that category?
Yeah, but that's indicative of the whole hobby. My sole customer that I work on for the last year and a half is one of the biggest data companies in the world. Okay. Everything is data driven. And I feel like that's the way the hobby moves. They used to be grassroots. I always say the secondary market's undefeated. They can't get their hands on that. It's like these tech companies that drive us to cut the cord from cable TV or tell us we need a new dongle or a new connector for our iPhone or our Mac. That's not what cards should be all about. We shouldn't be guiding people to where their profit centers are. They need to do a better job at adapting to what has been a hobby for a very long time. And I feel they're reacting to each other more than reacting to the individuals who make up the hobby. So that's
No, but
a bit of frustration. Data informed versus data driven is a pretty big gulf there.
I take that point, but you've also mentioned in other correspondence with me and discussions, the move toward monopoly and single source is troubling. If you had three equal competitors in each of these categories that you and I are talking about, there would be innovation, there would be competition, there'd be much better customer service.
Describe equality or equal.
No, just major players.
Okay, because we had that in grading, right?
Had that in grading, and I think up until 4 years ago, there were three. Now there's four, and unfortunately, the perception of number four is Beckett grading. But more than that, it's PSA is so dominant that what they say goes. Fanatics is not the only card manufacturer, but they are quickly becoming the main card manufacturer that can set the tone for the industry. Breaking, there's lots of breakers out there, and yet Fanatics is going to try to get some control over that. So it's not moving in a good direction to me.
But I think that's no different than, you can say Fanatics, you can say Panini, you can say whomever you want, but they're all seem to migrate towards the same model where breaking, they don't want to put cards on every countertop in the country. It seems to me as they want to sell fewer, more expensive cards as opposed to cards for everyone. They don't care how they derive their profits, their income, or their revenue. I think that whether it's multiple massive cards or where it's fewer cards, obviously fewer cards means higher efficiency on their part. If they could sell more expensive but fewer cards and still hit their profit margins, that's the problem we have. I don't think Panini's for the collector. I don't think Fanatics is for the collector. Upper Deck, I don't collect hockey cards, but they seem to have their little groove going there, which is fine. So I can't weigh in on that, but none of these firms are altruistic. And I'm not saying Topps was back in the day either, but we had other options from Topps as well. We had our Slurpee cups and all sorts of fun stuff.
Okay. Your correspondence with me in our discussions, as I said, one thing is the 10Xing. If you're suggesting that the card companies are going to 10X revenues, which I think they'd like to do, without 10Xing the number of collectors, which is what you're intimating, and that's the way it seems to be going, trying to get more money from the same pockets. I don't like that, as well as getting more people involved. I think we're on the same page here. When I've mentioned that Optimization sometimes is better than maximization. I mean by that, maximization is frequently a short-term mindset. I'm going to get all I can this year. I'm going to maximize the profits because whatever pressures there are. It's good to make money. Optimization is a little more of a long-term view. Private companies have more of a luxury to be able to do that, to say, you know what, I got to leave a little meat on the bone because I want to have a long, annuitized income stream where I'm not squeezing the last dollar out this year and not leaving room for excitement for the next year. And some of them have lost that. In the old days, there was a steady increase, it seemed, throughout the food chain, and that was good. But then we got into the junk wax era and we had a restart. And now it's the same thing. We're moving into higher priced, and you're going to make the same amount of money by selling less cards to less people. That's not healthy in the long run.
Well, it's healthy for their bottom line. But if you're
only,
looking at
only this year's.
Yeah, but if you can run the printing presses half the time and have half the shift work going and half the packaging, yet have the same revenue, then that's what they're at. No, these card companies aren't run by guys with cigars and polyester pants anymore. They're all MBAs. They're going to be outsourcing these things overseas. There's going to be a company in Vietnam that prints cards, including tariffs, for the fraction of what they can do it here. They tried to go digital, right? NFTs were pretty cheap to produce. And
like zero?
Yeah, exactly. Again, they're not altruistic. They're profit driven, which I don't blame anybody that spends that amount of money, but it doesn't mean the hobby needs to follow in lockstep with that method. I've gone through these iterations with my computer I have in front of me from 1993 when I first bought my computer. Disk drives, CD-ROMs, zip drives, different connectors, all that stuff. They were migrating me to a future that I didn't know I needed. I know I don't need a future where I spend $15,000 on a 2024 serial numbered card that sounds like a Starbucks order by a soccer mom. I need a lot of cards, and everybody's a little bit different. Somebody wants to buy that one $15,000 card, but that's not how we should be molding the future of collecting and collectors. We talk about binary. That's how sports is. Sports is completely data driven now, right? And there's a space in sports for data, but there's no soul, it seems like, in baseball at this point. When we're talking about launch angles and exit velocities and all that stuff, there's no soul. And it's the same thing with collecting. Is we're reducing the soul, and AI is going to write music, make commercials, and write your term papers for you, but there's no soul to it. Rant over. Sorry.
Okay, first of all, you're ranting, and you're one of the guys that thinks collectivists, or the new name, it has collect in it, which all you're saying is that collecting and collectors are what really matter. Now, back in the late 80s, early 90s, the new regimes that came into the card company space were packaged goods people. They basically commoditized. We're going to get in every grocery store, in every convenience store, in every card store, and that cards were omnipresent. They were everywhere. That's one kind of commoditization of cards. What's happening now is a commoditization of cards toward lottery tickets.
Right.
Because the commodity that is sold a lot of when you go into convenience stores, not a pack of cards or box of cards, it's lottery tickets. How many lottery tickets do you want? And so that's a commodity. Now, it happens to be when you scratch it off, 1 out of a zillion people makes this a huge amount of money. That's what we're doing. Tons of people go to Vegas. Tons of people buy lottery tickets. I don't want to be emulating that in the card collecting hobby because of the word collect.
Yeah.
Collective us. It's up to us. And I'm now one of the us. I'm not an industry leader. I'm a former leader. And so I'm not starting a mutiny here with you, but I'm saying we want to take back our hobby. Yes, there's an industry aspect to it, but at the core, there's a hobby. It's collectors getting together and having some sense of community. The other episode we did a little while ago with Rich about the evolution of card shows and the emergence of a few more of these small to medium-sized card shows. Just a kinder, gentler approach. I hope that sticks. Otherwise, you're just going to have a few major promoters.
It won't go away because card shows are like prairie dogs. You close one hole, they'll pop out of another one. You will never be able to shut down the card show industry at the grassroots level, which Even shows like the Dallas Card Show and the Shriners and Philly Show, they're big shows, but I still consider them at the grassroots level because they're not getting their direction from the ivory tower. It's being put on by people that we recognize. And the only thing that matters when you walk through those doors isn't Tom Brady walking around with cameras around him. It's the collector wanting to collect cards.
Okay, you mentioned gopher holes. If you turn the clock back 30 years, there were a mass proliferation of card shows, and some of them they were not gopher holes, they were sinkholes. We'd go to the show and there'd be nobody there. We had analysts that flew into Chicago. They went to the main show and then they'd go into the suburbs, and some of these shows were not even a ghost town. It was like a sham. One dealer that had 20 tables, almost no attendance, and no value for us to be there. That's a ripoff. Okay, I don't want that. I want people that are enterprising, entrepreneurial promoters that say, I'm going to start out with something. I'm going to provide a show that's good for the collectors and good for the dealers. There's going to be some balance there. And I'm not going to charge an arm and a leg to the dealer because he or she's got to make money. Collectors have to have a good deal. And we got to get back to this symbiosis and this ecosystem that is not the apex predator takes whatever they want.
Yeah, but even Topps wasn't able to do that. When you were in the 1970s, what cars was Jim Beckett going after? He wasn't going after 70s Topps or 60s Topps. You were out on the hunt for the stuff that is finally, I think, getting its just props, all that stuff from the pre-war and stuff like that. So it's even when Topps ran the thing as a monopoly, they didn't control the card shows and the secondary market. So I'm definitely not concerned about that happening with Fanatics. Why should we?
They've got 10 times as much marketing dollars. Topps had almost zero marketing dollars back in those days.
Their marketing was the baseball players, right?
They were the only game in town. If you're talking about the 60s and the 70s, and every kid did it, you'd go to the store and the cards were there in the spring.
Or you could go to a game for $4.25. Yeah. And the marketing, again, was on the field. And that's something that
you love the sport and you love it.
So nowadays we have a product that has a heavy gambling bent, propped up by sports. And back then baseball was king. And now you can say baseball is second fiddle at best, maybe. And you have sports that are driven by gambling. I still thoroughly enjoy watching football, the NFL. I don't gamble, thankfully, but I know that my son's generations, both of them, a lot of it is supported by gambling. And there's always been sports gambling, but out in the open gambling, Fanatics has a gambling wing now, right? So having to prop that up instead of making memories, if your memory is a parlay you hit in the play-in game at the NCAA tournament last year, then maybe that's not a sustainable market.
Okay, there's a three-legged stool that Fanatics has. Most people think they did apparel. They're huge in apparel. Hey, they're doing cards now. They're starting out doing some gambling. I think gambling is their number one peg in their three-legged stool. It will be, I think, because it's going to be a cash cow. And you're mentioning parlays. Again, I do have a PhD in statistics. I'm telling you, the parlays are the most profitable bets for the bookie. And so they've convinced people to chase these very unlikely things, not the parlay aspect, but a variation of that are these incredible bounties, $1 million bounties for something that's unlikely.
I have a theory that sports cards are a loss leader from the get-go. I think it's there to support and prop up the other businesses. And if it makes a little bit of money, that's great. But as long as they can use that as a way to introduce people to apparel and gambling, then why not lose a couple $1 million a year?
You've just justified the Javits Center Fanatics Fest. On that basis, they could do that every year, lose 10 million and be gleefully excited. They got huge coverage and
marketing.
It built up the rest of their business. If they keep doing it just there and don't mess around with these other cities that are nice, even Orlando, which is a really cool place to take your family. But if they just keep doing this Javits Center on a certain weekend, they will have the attention of the sports world equivalent better than what the Comic-Con had in San Diego.
Well, I don't know. That's a juggernaut. Be careful with that.
I'm saying
that's a juggernaut.
I think that's where they're heading. Yeah. But Comic-Con had a number of years to run before there was competition.
Yep, for sure.
But this Fanatics Fest at the Javits Center, you've justified it.
It is a loss leader.